Hi everybody, well, Darinka and Muku are back in the studio with me. How cute, right? We're talking again about Vedic astrology, finding health, wealth and self in your Vedic astrology chart. We'll also dip into Venus remedies, the yin and yang, masculine and feminine of the birth chart as well. Enjoy. Hi, I'm Sue Lindsay and this is the Well Woman podcast. I've worked with countless women and teenage girls over the years as a natural women's health clinician, and I know how hard it can be to get the help you need to overcome hormonal imbalance, infertility, perimenopausal symptoms, and more. In this podcast, I bring together the best of East and West, my knowledge in natural medicine and nutrition, together with insights from experts in the field of women's wellness. I'm your trusted guide as you navigate your hormone healing journey, giving you support and guidance along the way. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. It's time to nourish you with Well Woman.
I think one of the other main things with astrology that's so helpful is the timing of events. It's essentially all about time. And so there's a time and a place. So you're not going to necessarily see the results of your actions immediately. That's why in the mid-40s, people start to notice the effects of their habits from the 20s and 30s because the body changes. So if you know that you have a tendency for a certain thing, and if you are able to cultivate enough discipline and the awareness to, okay, you can go overboard on that much, but you just have that understanding. Then
And that's,
you can,
I guess, also where the dosha, the tri-dosha system would come in knowing what your tendencies are and what your predispositions might be, so you can live in a way that's more in harmony.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the dosha system is with astrology too, because the planets have to have qualities and doshas to them. So you know, like you might have somebody that has a lot of fire planets, and I've seen charts with no planets in water signs, and these people can really struggle with emotions, and they're much more intellectual and practical, you know. But they also may struggle with water related issues in their body, like circulation.
Oh, I see. So water would have that relationship with deep emotions and the ability to express those emotions or even tune in to your body.
Yeah.
I mean, would that be someone who might find it hard to meditate unless it was something like a moving meditation or a guided meditation?
Yeah. Absolutely, because you can see the constitution, the basic personality, and then you would make suggestions based on that. Like, for example, like I have Saturn in my first house, and that's a harsh placement to have. It's very heavy, and I find that there's a lot of positivity by going to the gym. Now, going to the gym is not traditionally seen as very spiritual. It's not yin. It's not any of those things. But it does something for that because Saturn is a harsh planet. So I need to match that harshness. Sitting and meditating all the time, yes, it absolutely has its place. But I know for me, doing something that's some intense physical thing is really important for my constitution. Somebody that has Saturn and Mars combination, they could be fantastic athletes. There's an intense dynamic that drives those people, so they need an outlet, otherwise they could become quite aggressive. Most people know these things about themselves, you see, but having that reflected back and reaffirmed, that it can be really helpful. And yeah, you can see chronic diseases, you can see those warning signs. Again, going back to karma, there are different kinds of karma. There's fixed, semi-fixed, and changeable. Some karmas are fixed. You cannot change them. You can't change your heritage, your socioeconomic background. You know, there's certain things like that. Semi-fixed, you know, some things like, okay, you've got your constitution. You can strengthen it or weaken it based on your choices. And then there's a lot more changeable karma. You know, you get an accident, but you heal. So there's, you know, or you have access to doctors and things like that. And also when you apply enough free will, you can change that course, like sometimes like with your location or changing house or
big things happen for women in the midlife as well. So 30s, 40s, 50s. I feel like that's where we can start feeling overwhelmed. Yeah, I wonder if that's like a time where we can start to work a little bit of magic, make better decisions, or decisions that are more self-loving, self-compassionate.
What do you mean by overwhelm? What do you notice with your clients?
What I've noticed with, myself firstly, and many of my clients, because most of my clients are in midlife, so they're sort of like mid-30s through to early 50s. And I've noticed that this is a time where we can really struggle with the decisions that we've made up to this point about maybe what job we decided to get into, what partner we decided to be with, where we decided to live. And at the same time, we have a lot more responsibilities building up. So it can just feel like too much. It's a lot for the adrenal system.
That's really interesting how you say that. The age of 30 is such a turning point, 28 to 30, because the timing of that is your first Saturn return. Now, the planets also have age of maturation, and the age of 36, 37 is the age that Saturn matures, which is why, you often see people get married after 37, they start a business, or they really feel like they've gained real solid success after 37, they feel like they found themselves. The North and South Node, which are the eclipse points, they're known as Rahu and Ketu. They mature at the age of, there's some discrepancy, but 42 and 48. And what happens if Saturn and Rahu Ketu are placed with a personal planet like the Sun or the Moon, that can actually slow down or not necessarily retard the growth in a bad way, but it holds back the maturation until that age. So you might have people that finally at 48, that karma that represents holding back is release. 42 is another significant age. So these timing of the maturation of the planets has a big impact, and that depends on your natal chart. And of course there's a Dasha system, which is a planetary period. You look at that to see what's the nature of the experience somebody's going through. And that often, if not always, correlates with physical changes in the body, in their, personal life circumstances and those pillars that, uphold their reality.
And also, I guess, interesting to think about what happens in our hormonal environment between those ages, because 37 to 42 is kind of getting close to a time where it's going to be difficult to conceive if a woman wants to have a baby. And then 42 through to 48 is when estrogen starts to fluctuate and go a bit feral.
I read somewhere, or maybe it was you even, that said to me that if you've lived a life of relative balance, your menopause and the perimenopausal shouldn't be too chaotic. I think this is one of the hardest things being an astrologer. It's like I have actually, when I've dated people, they've never been into astrology. It's been hilarious. And I'm the one going, unsolicited advice, and it becomes super annoying. I see things in someone's chart. Like I might be like, well, you know what, in a couple of years, you're going to hit a wall. You know that our modern life is very divorced from any kind of spiritual understanding or connection. It almost gets laughed at and ridiculed. Living a spiritual life is about living in balance, living in harmony. You don't have to be spiritual, you don't have to believe in things. You just have to sort of understand yourself, and your body and your needs. But depending on the person's karma and their soul development, someone with Rahu and Moon, that they'll never be emotionally satisfied. They're always going to want to have new experiences. They may love all the drinks and this and that, or different kind of experiences. But what is Moon? Moon is mind, and Rahu kind of disturbs that. Moon is also hormones, and that's our emotions, and it's how we feel, and it's how we think, and that's governed by our emotions, right? And so with Rahu or Saturn there, that really impacts that energetic flow in our body. And so if that person isn't managing their moon correctly, then you'll see that in the transits, and there could be a bunch of correlating things happening for somebody that would act as the trigger. So the astrologer is like, well, this is the time period where these X, Y, and Z is likely to happen.
So interesting. Because yes, the moon would correlate with moon cycles and our cycles. Sometimes for women, instead of saying we're feeling emotional, we might just say we're hormonal.
Yeah.
So it's definitely
interchangeable.
that strong
isn't it?
correlation there.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So that's why, like, moon is our mind, and that's the, planet that we need to manage the most, because it's the one that is moving around the planet the fastest. So our mind is always got a different feeling and a different shade. And so if your moon is afflicted, knowing that helps you. Like, I know some people, moon and Rahu, and they have hidden phobias and fears. I know when they get triggered, and I check in on them sometimes, It's difficult to understand when you've got that shadow, and they may be like, well, my mum was blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's part of the healing. But I feel like it's more about educating people on it so that they can find their own pathway. My moon is in Libra, but it's in the 12th house, which means loss. So even if my mum was alive, she would still be distant from me, perhaps even emotionally distant. My moon is in Libra, so it's ruled by Venus. So if I want to understand how my moon functions, I look at Venus, because where is that energy going? And so I've got Venus placed in a very insecure position. Losing my mom at a young age didn't give me the emotional security that I need in the world. And that's been a tough thing to navigate. But symbolically, it's there in my chart. So I have to do Venus remedies, things to support my moon and Venus. And of course, it gets triggered in relationships. It gets triggered in this and that and the other. But I have this language to help understand it. And so then there are tools and remedies, things that I can do specifically that's unique for that moon placement to help balance. Does it make it easier? Yes and no. You still have to deal with it. But it makes dealing with the reality less like you've got blinkers on. And that's the whole purpose of Jytoish. It gives you that awareness.
That's like spreading the light, shining the light. What are these remedies that you mentioned? I mean, are they rituals, practices, meditations, mantras?
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah.
I might have a remedy. I often send my clients to go and call Sulin. I say, look, go and find out what your body needs.
I love that.
Go and learn. Like, I've learned so many amazing things about my body and about systems, through seeing Sulin. And traditional Indian remedies often include a lot of gemstones and a lot of mantra and things like that. Now, I'm not a traditional Indian astrologer at all. I'm a white girl and I live in Sydney in Australia. Astrology is a universal science, so how do you apply it to the world? So I might have some people, they're not into mantras, that they're not going to do it. Say they've got an afflicted Saturn, so there's a lot of sorrow and heaviness in their life. I might say to them, look, stop wearing so much black, especially if Saturn is a negative planet for them, if it's giving them negative results. And I feel like Saturn remedies are good for anyone because Saturn's going to trouble everybody. So we all have to deal
like the reality of life, death, all those 100%. Heavy things.
Those heavy things. So serve your grandparents. Be kind to your parents. Overcome your prejudice. Be of service, because Saturn is ultimately a servant. Help the poor and the needy. Give your time. Feeding crows. Crows are one of Saturn's vehicles, and of course, crows are often a symbol of the underworld. Black dogs are connected to Saturn. Sesame oil. So every aspect of life, from plant, seed, clothing, fabric, location, animal, can all be attributed to a planetary energy. And the planet is actually reflecting a universal ray. Planets act as kind of dispositors of a universal energy. So that's why shamanic societies would know the language of the universe, but they would be reading the birds in the sky, and they'll be reading the cowrie shells on the ground, or they'll be watching the certain signs, they would pick up. They would understand that language.
Whereas I guess in the West, from what we might have been told by culture, society, whatever, reading tea leaves in a cup is a frivolity.
Absolutely.
Or having a tarot reading is, maybe it means something, but it probably doesn't. There's that sort of narrative, isn't there?
Yeah, it's all of that. I know that in Iran they do the tea leaves, and a lot of these cultures include that. All of that are little windows into a universal song, a universal language, and a universal book. I feel like astrology is just incredibly vast and very deep, so it's very precise, and it's a shortcut. It's a shortcut into the heart of a matter. In 5 minutes, you can just go boom, 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 boom. And then you go deeper and you can, analyze. And there are other astrologers that are extremely advanced and they can give incredible predictions and things like that. I feel like more, for me in astrology, it's more about giving, for the individual to gain awareness into themselves. Going back to what you were saying about remedies, for example, like I'm healing my Venus. What does Venus mean? Venus is everything to do with beauty, luxury, art, fragrances, nice clothes, nice fabrics, wearing makeup, having a nice clean vehicle, a clean car, a clean house, keeping fresh flowers. Because Venus is also connected to Lakshmi, which is also about your wealth. And so then there are different forms of wealth, including health. When you understand all those attributes, you start to sort of augment your life in that way. And I personally feel like it makes life more magical, more beautiful.
It feels like it has that feminine energy to it.
Absolutely.
That yin quality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That, Moon and Venus are the two primary planets connected to the water element. And they are inherently Venus. Like in a chart, you may see if a man has Moon and Venus very prominent or in water signs, he may have a lot more feminine qualities and may feel uncomfortable with his masculinity, or he may seem to be a bit of a pushover, or he may be really gentle, but he could be very, very good for spiritual perspectives. A woman that has too much fire energy will come across as too action-oriented and masculine. And that may be off-putting, but it also can show the physical imbalances. There is a branch of medical astrology where you can use it as a partial diagnostic tool, just to, like I mentioned earlier, just to see where the inevitable weaknesses are going to be in the body.
So on that note of women having maybe a stronger masculine quality, men having a stronger feminine quality, it's not really bad, is it? It's about our individual balances, because we have both the yin, the yang, we have both the masculine, the feminine. But I feel like for, as a perimenopausal woman, sometimes I come up against feeling like I'm living in a very yang world. This is a world that really favors the masculine and the doing and the action.
I feel like, the times that we live in is like a world out of balance. And we're seeing that in every aspect of life. It's growth, or the values of society is on exponential growth. It's not based on inherently understanding the ebbs and flows and the laws of the universe. It's a capitalist society. And fundamentally, the basic tenets of society go against the laws of life, which is why there are, in my view, why there's so many social problems. And different versions of this have been going on throughout human history, where you have power and power corrupts. Then it leads to a host of issues. And there's a quote, actually, that I really like. It says that strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. Hard times create strong men. So we have this ongoing cycle of life. I feel that the balance of the masculine and the feminine is so deeply out of balance, and that's reflected in the type of people that are being born, which is also reflecting all of the synthetic hormones and chemicals that are being used in our food. That's impacting the way that we develop, which is reflecting a greater cycle of time, which is world out of balance. So what can we do? Essentially when you're studying astrology or looking at a chart, you're looking at your nature, you're looking at what is the reality of a situation. There's nothing there that's not actually happening. And when you know that's your nature, you have to go against that sometimes. My tendency is to be lazy and stay in bed. Well, no one's going to kick me out of bed. Like, I know that's my tendency, so I have to do things to counteract it. And that's what makes it so hard, because we don't want to change. Humans, we are inherently lazy as a species. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just understanding that, for us to make a positive, effective change in our life, we have to take that responsibility and gain in that self-awareness. So when it comes to, masculine and feminine, we see it as the Shiva and the Shakti. You see it as the yin and the yang. You see it as the polarities that exist. In our bodies, we have that with the Sushumna. So people who practice yoga, they will know about the Ida and the Pingala, the ascending force and the descending force. I mentioned earlier about the Kalpurush, but the planets also reflect the organs in the body. And the sun and the moon reflect the right eye for the sun and the left eye for the moon. And so if there's an affliction, for example, because they represent our eyes, they also means that, and many people wear glasses, but an afflicted sun or moon in some way indicates eyesight issues.
Wow, that's really interesting. I think I have that, because when I look out of my right eye, everything's blurry, and my left, everything's clear.
You have a sun in Libra, so sun in Libra is beautiful. It's soft and gentle, but it's the sun is at its weakest there. So and the sun is the right eye.
Yeah, because when I go for my tests, they never change the prescription, but I can see that I'm blurry in one,
but stronger in the other.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Historically, I've often thought the right side of the body was more the yang side, and the left side is more the yin, which also makes sense. If the sun is the yang and the moon is the yin.
Yeah, the sun is the active force of consciousness, and it's the Atman, or the I am presence, whereas the moon is literally reflecting the light of the sun. If the sun is the soul, the moon is the mind. So ideally you want the mind to be healthy and clear so that it can reflect the agenda of the soul, without hindrance.
So interesting. And that reminds me then of that alternate nostril breathing, the Nadi Shodhana, about balancing that Ida and Pingala.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that would be a nice practice, wouldn't it?
It is. And that's, again, like that would fall into, one of the remedies, for balancing the hemispheres.
And I imagine in your sessions as well, because you gave me a mantra to practice, the Ganesha mantra, you would have remedies that you could recommend to your clients as well. So it could be mantra, or it could be a herbal tea, or some sort of daily ritual, some meditation technique. Have you got a favorite? Have you got something that you find always helps you to come back into balance?
I think one of my favorite ways to nurture my moon is that I don't have a bath, but I love water and baths. And I love doing foot baths. The feet also is connected to Pisces, but it's also about grounding. And, it's just so nice having your feet touched and massaged sometimes. And so just soaking my feet is just such a nice, soft, gentle way to ground myself, and also just to have a bit of that water element around. So I feel that being around water and making a conscious effort to immerse myself in water in some way is really balancing for my moon.
And was that you foot bath this morning, Epsom salts? what do you do? I want to imagine this foot bath. Sounds beautiful.
Well, this one was with the essential oils and apple cider vinegar and ylang-ylang and some nice flowers. So that's one of my favorite ones. Another one is mantra. I do love the sounding. So there are different mantras for different planets or different times. And keeping fresh flowers around from my garden. I like picking flowers and putting that in front of Lakshmi and Ganesh. Red flowers, like hibiscus in particular.
Oh, wow. This is all sounding very sattvic. Just a beautiful space to be in.
I've been curious about how people attract wealth. And not because about being money hungry, but about bringing abundance in. And abundance mindset it's so many multi-layered, but it's so much in the small actions that you do. It's about bringing that quality in your daily actions and your habits. Artistic people like to have dead flowers around or, dried up things, and they look nice, but they're dead. It's not living. It's not attracting wealth. So don't have that near the door. Don't have that on your altar.
Yes.
Have it somewhere else. Always have fresh flowers, for example. Always keep your floors clean. If you want wealth to enter your house, Lakshmi wants to enter. Is she going to enter a dirty place?
Yes, and Lakshmi needs candles, candles paving the way to the altar with the beautiful fresh flowers.
Ultimately, but on a symbolic level, that is very calming and healing for your mind as well. It's healing for your Venus. It's healing for your relationships. I know it sounds a bit cheesy or corny, but marriage is really a preparation for your so-called marriage with God or your connection with source energy. And, that devotional quality. But maybe you don't have a partner.
Let's say, you are yearning for a partner. Would that then create some emotional stress or anguish even, because that's part of our journey to prepare us for that ultimate devotional relationship?
Well, that's another layered question. I mean, sometimes you don't have a partner in this life or children because the debts are not there. You've completed that debt, so you don't have a debt with that soul to have that marriage or have the children. So it is more of a spiritual lifetime. A lot of people don't know that, and so it can create a lot of suffering for them. I feel that it's ultimately your relationship with yourself, and yourself is an aspect or a fragment of the supreme reality, which is God or whatever you want to call. So the more that you improve that relationship, and everyone, the relationship gurus are saying that, you can attract a partner. But if it's in your karma to have a partner, yes, then they will come at their time. But if it's not, then maybe you'll just have short affairs or things like that. There's a lot of gimmicks where they say, attract all these millions of dollars and, do these sales, and it's not going to work for everyone. And the reason is because they don't have those wealth signatures in their chart. That karma is not there. They don't have, that money is not accrued to them.
And in the same way, something that works for one person won't work for everyone else, or one health remedy or one herbal medicine.
Absolutely.
Work for one, but not for everyone.
Yeah, you have some people and they've always had chronic health issues, and that's part of their life, is having to manage that. You have some people that go from rags to riches, or you have people that go from riches to rags. Their key signatures, they come up in charts, and it takes time to analyze.
You would have that time in a session though, wouldn't you? You can just kind of sit down and go through everything, or is it something where it might be quite complex and layered, and so you might need to see someone a few times to get through everything?
No, it's more about if that's specifically what somebody wants to ask, they'll be is the wealth there? There are some stars, some parts of the zodiac that are more geared towards wealth creation and financial abundance. There are others where, no, it's not, the financial wealth is not necessarily the big thing in that life, and that would be an ongoing thing. And they'll always have enough, but don't stress yourself out trying to be a billionaire or a millionaire.
Very wise advice. Have enough, but don't get obsessed with having it all.
Exactly. And that goes with anything, really. It's an ongoing practice. And I feel like knowing astrology sometimes is a double-edged sword, but I am definitely so grateful to have this there, because the stuff that I've experienced in life, it takes all of that to another dimension.
And that was part 2 of my interview with Vedic astrologer Darinka. Stay tuned though, Darinka is going to chant a mantra, especially for all of you. And also stay tuned for information on how to find out more about seeing Darinka for a reading or ordering your own mini reading from her. Don't forget, Darinka will be running a beginner's Vedic astrology course this year. If you'd like to find out more about that, go on and head to darinkamaya.com, DARINKAMAJA, darinkamaya.com, where you can also find her Vedic astrology calendars. And follow Darinka on Instagram at DarinkaMaja, DarinkaMaja. And now for that mantra.
Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha.
That was part 2 of my interview with Vedic astrologer Darinka. I really hope you enjoyed this. All the best with your day, and I'll see you soon in another episode of Well Woman. Hey everybody, please note that the information, opinion and advice provided in this podcast are not intended to replace professional medical care. They are for general information and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast may not always be those of the host. Thanks for listening.